that was not me that clapped. Yeah, but I think you changed since then. Good evening. Well, we now have a musician and a music song. A song they call it songstress. Is it a songstress or is that saying something wrong? I don't know. But I don't know if they want to get together on a song or not. But anyway, hope everybody is doing well today. I'm going to go ahead and turn this mic that only has one battery power left off. So hope it doesn't static. First, I'm going to drop it. Oh, I knew it was going to make that noise. I sent Caleb to go. Hey, put your Bible down right there. And hey, YouTube, I sent Caleb to cut the okra. So, um, yeah, the garden out there, if you hadn't been out there, is looking nice. It's actually fairly dry, but he went to go cut the okra. So if anybody wants some okra, he'll have some back up here before you leave tonight. It looked like somebody got the squash, which is a good thing. The squash looked good and picked. There's butter beans going to be ready before long. You'll have to pick those. Greater love hath no man than this, but my back can't handle it. No. But no, I do encourage you to go out there and look at it and get some stuff that will be a blessing to you. That's one of the reasons we planted it, is to be a blessing. So thanks to the men that did that and have worked on it and everything. Tonight we are going to be in Psalm 39. Psalm 39 is where we are going to be tonight. As you're turning to Psalm 39, tonight the psalm is a little bit different in that it is not an overconfident psalm. It is not necessarily a psalm of petition. It's kind of a psalm that really we don't read a whole lot because it's not one that's near and dear to everybody's heart, in part because the psalmist is expressing not necessarily doubt, but just the difficulty. He's wrestling with some things in his mind. And so as he's doing that, it's one that really, on the surface level, is not as much there as it is about if you think about it. If you wrestle with what that means for us today as Christians and how we live life and what we believe. But in Psalm 39, it says, for the choir director, for Jeduthun, a psalm of David. Does anybody know who Jeduthun is or was? I didn't either. If you look in First Chronicles and Second Chronicles, that's where he's listed most. In First Chronicles 16:42, he's listed among the Levites that work in the temple. He's sometimes connected with Asaph and Haman. That's First Chronicles 25:1, Second Chronicles 5:12. Who were, the songs of Asaph. That's some of the psalms are related to that. So he seems to be a skilled musician. Also, in First Chronicles 9:16 and 16:38 and 41, he's listed. And so probably he was he's one of the guys that it really fit him. Maybe the song really fit him. Maybe he was especially skilled. I know when we were in Amory, we were having a special kind of service, and so we tied a song. We had like a prayer time and a song time, and so we asked different people that would fit that song to sing to match along with it. So like during my part, I asked somebody to sing, and they sang. And so now here David is probably like saying, "This is good for Jeduthun. Let's get Jeduthun to do that. He's going to really shine." Is one possible meaning for this. It could be something that he's known for. But regardless of what it is, for the choir director, the choir director would then lead the rest of the congregation. Now, this is something that's kind of odd for the congregation to be singing because like I said, it's not just a rah rah, yay, faith, yay, all of that. It's kind of a I'm wrestling with things kind of psalm. In Psalm 39, verse 1, it says, I said, I will guard my ways, so that I may not sin with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle. As long as the wicked are in my presence, I was speechless and quiet. I kept silent even from speaking good, and my pain intensified. My heart grew hot within me as I mused. A fire burned. I spoke with my tongue. And we'll stop right there because here he's got an internal anguish. He's careful not to speak. He's not speaking. He's sitting in silence. This is, you read in Job where it says that they just sat there for a long time. Well, the wise people, the sages of their day, a lot of times would sit before, instead of just jumping in, instead of just speaking, instead of just, how does that hit you right now? That kind of thing. They would sit, they would listen, they would think. But in here, his silence, it's part of it. The reason why is so that he would not sin with his tongue. Now, sinning with his tongue means that maybe he would be tempted to say something wrong about God. And certainly he didn't want to speak wrong about God, but he also, it seems, did not want to be misconstrued by the people. He even said, I refrained from speaking even good. I kept silent even from speaking good. So here it seems that even the good, that he doesn't want it to be misconstrued. Those people that were not believers, those people that were not that were not of the nation of Israel, those people that were not God-fearers, he didn't want to say something and then turn it and twist it. It's not like any of that happens today. It's like, it seems like everything now, you only read like 2 sentences, or you only listen to 2 sentences, and then people will jump off to, oh, well, they're in that. Oh, I know where they're going. And they might forget raising up any new arguments or any new points or points of consideration. So oftentimes people just once they figure out, they want to lump you in a group and then dismiss everything else you said and not really listen. Well, the psalmist here possibly could have been doing that, because what he's going to talk about is wrestling with God. Because he knows that all things come from God. He knows that life's short, and some of the things that he's going to say, if they quit listening after a sentence or two, might lead them to a wrong path, might lead them to false. It might reinforce their distrust of God or unbelief in God. And so he's wanting to be very clear. He'd rather be silent than to speak things, because he is in a messiness. There's a messiness to all of this that he's pondering about and thinking through. So as he says, I was speechless and quiet, but then my heart grew hot within me. Even though he was calm on the outside, he was raging inside. Even though that he was not speaking, it's not that he didn't have anything to think, that he didn't have opinions, is that he was not speaking them. But like Jeremiah said in Jeremiah 29, that there was a fire burning inside of him, that he had to speak. Eventually, the psalmist here does speak. And this is what he says, starting in verse 4. Lord, make me aware of my end and the number of my days, so that I will know how short-lived I am. In fact, you have made my days just inches long, and my lifespan is as nothing to you. Yes, every human being stands as only a vapor. Yes, a person goes about like a mere shadow. Indeed, they rush around in vain, gathering possessions without knowing who will get them. Now that's a kind of, at first glance, it looks kind of depressing. He's well aware of the brevity of his life. And he says, Lord, make me aware of the end and the number of my days. Not that he wants to know the day he dies. If you were given the option and God said, I will tell you the exact day you're going to die, how many of you would want to know that? A few say yes, and a lot say no. It's not that he necessarily wants to know, but to the end, because it is just a snippet in time. Think about this. 5-year-olds have lived in quarantine 5% of their life. 5-year-olds have lived in quarantine 5% of their life. Now, for a 50-year-old, that's only half of 1% of their life. But for a 5-year-old, that's 5% of their life has been lived in quarantine. That's a substantial part. I think that's why kids can't wait a week, because, I mean, a week is a larger percentage of their life than for adults. For adults, we're like, I've had more weeks under my belt than I care to know about. But for kids, they haven't had that many weeks, so it's a larger percentage of their life. Well, the psalmist here is looking at it and comparing it with God. And you can say Methuselah, 969 years or whatever it is, and however long Methuselah is, that's not a very long time in light of all eternity, in light of God's time frame. And he says, help me to know the shortness of my days. Rochelle sent us a meme the other day that said, do you want to know how to slow down time? Get in plank position. Because a 30-second plank is the longest. And somehow, whenever you're in plank position, 30 seconds lasts a lot longer. But here he's wrestling with that, and he's saying, look, my days are short. It's not that he's wanting them shorter. It's that he would be aware of it. Because in that, it changes the pursuits. But he says, in fact, you have made my days just inches long. I mean, obviously, we know days aren't measured in inches. Lives aren't measured in inches. But it says nothing to you on a timeline. If you look at maps, and they always have that key about how long a distance is, the image of our lifespan in years, he said, is but a short time. Yet every human stands as only a vapor. Your translation might say a mere breath. The word there is hebel, which in Ecclesiastes is translated as what? Anybody want to take a guess? What's Ecclesiastes known as saying? Vanity. Vanity of vanities. Vanity or futility. He said, yes, every human being stands as only a futility, only a vanity. It is as nothing. It is as a wisp. It is as only a vapor. And then it says Selah, which Selah, there's a lot wondering about the definition of that, and it probably is that pause. Here Selah is used twice after that same phrase. In verse 5 is only a vapor, and then down in verse 11, every human being is only a vapor, and it is that pause. It is that reflect. It's let that sink in for just a moment. It's kind of ironic. It is no time at all. Take time and think about that. So regardless of how fast or how slow our lives seem to be moving, if we look at it in the big picture, it is not very much. Every man is only a breath. Who's famous? Think back in history about who is famous, and then think what they accomplished. Think about the people that we remember. Think about all the people that have lived that we don't remember anymore. Their lives are as vapor, but yet even the most famous of people, save for Jesus himself, what did they accomplish that still goes on? My guess is most of the people you can think of, the results of what they did is that they inspired other people to do likewise. And so really what you're talking about then is what other people have accomplished based off of what they've done. But what they actually accomplished, what they actually did, what did they achieve? And that's only a small segment of all the people. Everything that we strive for, and this isn't to depress anybody, but everything we strive for, everything we go for, the psalmist here is saying, every person's like a mere shadow. They rush around in vain. They gather possessions, and they don't even know who's going to get them. So regardless of what people accomplish, they run around. They uproar for nothing. What are we trying to accomplish in life? What riches are we trying to amass? Because every riches that we amass is eventually, of course, returns to dust or it's lost. When's the last time you had a yard sale? How much did you pay for it? Then how much were you willing to pay somebody just to take it, just to get rid of it? But we do that. We amass so very much, and it's important to us at the time. We pursue these goals thinking that we've got to accomplish something, yet after we've accomplished it, what have we really accomplished? And so the psalmist here is looking, and it's kind of a melancholy thought, but he looks at everything that man says is important, everything that man tries to accomplish and gather and obtain, and he realizes that it is as nothing. In verse 7, though, this is kind of where a change takes place. This is where his faith does still show up. Now, Lord, what do I wait for? My hope is in you. My hope is in you. My hope isn't in my accomplishments. My hope isn't in the riches that I obtain. My hope isn't in any of that. He says, rescue me from all my transgressions. Do not make me the taunt of fools. I am speechless. I do not open my mouth because of what you have done. Remove your torment from me. Because of the force of your hand, I am finished. You discipline a person with punishment for iniquity, consuming like a moth what is precious to him. Yes, every human being is only a vapor. Selah. Stop and think about that. My God is my only hope. But yet, why was he silent before him? Because he says, you're my only hope, yet you're also the one that is in control. You are also the one that is tormenting me, according to verse 10. Yet you're the one that is forcing me to where I am finished. You are punishing me. I'm speechless because of what you've done. Not speechless in awe, but speechless under the weight of it. And so for the psalmist to start talking with that, and people will pick up on lines and say, hey, yeah, didn't you say one time that God was bringing you to an end? Oh, yeah, sure. What a great God. And so wrestling with the mess of it all, as even as Christians, sometimes we wrestle with these same things. We have faith in God. We have trust in God. We know that His eternity, His plan never fails. Yet sometimes we say, why, God? We say, I don't understand, God. We say, God, if you are good, then why is there evil? We say, God, we have questions. We have doubts. We have things that we wrestle with. And here the psalmist is going through those very same things, yet my hope is in you. He says to rescue me from all my transgressions. Earlier, he was concerned that he would not speak so that he would not sin. He wants to be righteous before God. He wants to be upright. He wants to be forgiven of his sins, to be rescued, to be saved from his transgressions, to be saved from his sins. He also wants, as he writes so many other times, not to be the taunt of fools. But once again, I do not open my mouth because of what you have done. And here, as he goes through all of this, he's low in part because of his sin, but in part because of the transitory nature of life. Since life is so perplexing with what God does, because there's no obvious way that he can talk through all of this. He knows that God is responsible for things, and he knows that life isn't what it wants it to be. So should he cry out to God? Should he complain to God? Should he fault God for what it is that he's doing? Or because while he says, my hope is in you, yet everything that in him sees that God has his hand upon him. And so as he's wrestling through all of this, he wants to continue to put his hope in God. He wants to continue to live the righteous life. Yet he is also asking questions. In verse 12, he says, hear my prayer, Lord, and listen to my cry for help. Do not be silent at my tears, for I am here with you as an alien, a temporary resident like all my ancestors. Turn your angry gaze from me so that I may be cheered up before I die and gone. In Hebrew society, the passing guest, the transient person, the temporary resident was afforded certain rights and privileges. In fact, if you think about Lot inviting the people in, why part of the reason Lot invited them in is because it was what was expected, what was right to do. They had a hospitality. For people going through the region, it was expected and it was right for them to have a hospitality for the transitory person, for the alien, for that person to have rights. And even in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 10:19, it says, "Don't you remember you used to be the resident alien in Egypt? So you treat people well." In Leviticus 25:23, it talks about the resident alien, that we are the resident aliens, and that. Of course, if you jump to the New Testament, it talks about how this world is not our own. In Hebrews, it talked about that they were looking for a kingdom that was not of this place. They were well aware that this earth is only a passing shadow. And so they were looking for a kingdom that is yet to come, that this world is not ours. And so here the psalmist is saying, here David is saying that I am as an alien, a temporary resident like all my ancestors. He knew the brevity of his life. He knew that every human is only a vapor. He knew that with all of his accomplishments, with all that he's done, it was still but just for a moment. And so he said, turn your angry gaze from me so that I may cheer up before I die and am gone. Now that's one thing that seems to kind of contradict in my mind. I know that I'm only here for just a little while, and I want to be focused on the things that I need to be focused on for this world that's not my own. Yet he says, I want to be cheered up before I'm gone. He's evidently wanting happiness on earth. He's wanting to be cheerful before he's dead and gone. Not whenever I die and I'm gone and I'm in heaven face to face with you, then I'll be happy. No, he says, I want to be cheerful before I die and am gone. He says it's worthless for man to pursue accomplishments. It's worthless for man to accumulate stuff. But I want to be cheerful before I die and am gone. And so he's wrestling, and as Christians we see a tension between it because we want to be wholly devoted to God, yet it's not just concessory that we say, but I've got to have a break sometimes. We wrestle with righteousness, we wrestle with cheerfulness and joy, and we wrestle with what this world has to offer and how much is enough. I read it's like 6 years old or something now, but somebody reposted it, and they said, and they were talking about how to read the Bible, and they said we have to be careful as Christians in America because our situation isn't like them. We would be the Egyptian. We would be the Roman person living in their villa because we're in the position of power. America has wealth. And this isn't like white privilege, black privilege. This isn't any of that. This is simply saying that we are in an affluent culture. We aren't the oppressed. But yet the Bible was always written from the downcast, from the lowly of society, from the down and out. And so we've got to be careful that we don't read, that we don't say, if God's saying, blessed are the lowly and meek, and we're up here, that we say, well, God was just talking about here, and then go up from there. We need to have that humble attitude. We need to have that really that same attitude that would look after the resident alien, that would look after the one that is simply passing by, the one that would see what they had and give unto others. And we've got to be careful to remember that we are temporary residents, that we are the temporary residents, that this world is not our own, that accumulating wealth and accumulating possessions and all the achievements that we can pursue as men it is not where it is. But yet it is also evidently okay to say, God, I want to be cheered up before I'm gone. I do want to enjoy. So how do we wrestle with how balancing what's the appropriate level of cheer? What's the appropriate level of cheer for a Christian? Is it appropriate for a Christian to what's appropriate for a Christian for a level of cheer before it starts pursuing the worldliness that the Psalm speaks against? What level is that? Is that different for each person? I think it would be different from each person because you have Solomon that God said, here, be very rich. You have the widow with the two mites, different ends of the spectrum, but yet God was pleased with both of them, at least at different times. And so the degree isn't necessarily as important as what it is we do with it, what we do with our possessions. Do we seek the possessions? Do we pursue achievements and to that end? Or do we instead hope in God and leave it up to Him first? How do we remember the transient people? How do we remember the lowly? How do we remember that for them, they were told, remember, you used to be like that in Egypt, and I brought you out, so remember that. How do we remember what we used to be like before Christians and reflect people and reflect in our lives that to other people? Because we are resident aliens in this world. This world is not our own. We belong to the kingdom of heaven. Yet while we're on this earth, we are told to interact. We are told to remember those that are around us. And then also, how do we balance being real and transparent in front of non-Christians? You can call it a Facebook identity or whatever else. How many people have ever had a bad day on Facebook? Not many. It sure doesn't seem like many people have a bad day on Facebook. It doesn't seem like very many people don't have their act together. Everybody's a perfect parent based off of what they put on Facebook. Everybody gets to go on. Everybody has their house in tip-top shape, and there's never any laundry that needs folded, according to Facebook. Everything's always right in Facebook. And as Christians, we can present that way sometimes. But yet I wonder if we present that, oh no, my faith in God is rock solid. I never wonder why there's evil because all I've got to do is just say it's in God's plan. Oh no, I never have doubts. I never have struggles. I've got it all down, locked tight, sealed, signed, and delivered. Whenever there are times whenever we wrestle, there are parts of Scripture that maybe we don't like. We submit ourselves to it because we know that it's true. We submit ourselves to it because it's God's Word, and even if we don't understand it, it's got to be obeyed. But there are some Scriptures that aren't easy for us to comprehend. There are some Scriptures that we wrestle with. And just like the psalmist that is very real here, as he wrestles with it, at first he kept silent about it, but then he eventually spoke. When should we be silent? When should we be real? When should we be transparent? How do we navigate this life of faith where we're not just putting on airs, but we are real in our faith and in expressing our faith? How do we share with the world in a way that brings honor and glory to God instead of remaining silent? These are some of the questions that we can deal with. I told you this isn't a normal psalm because there's not any lockstep things. It raises as many questions and as many things for us to wrestle with. But it's keeping in tenor with the psalm because the psalm is wrestling and asks questions and expresses how David was wrestling with this. So that's some things really for us to think about. And we can talk about it if anybody wants to volunteer, but some things for you to think about tonight. How do you remember to be an alien? And how do you remember to show the love to other aliens? What is an appropriate amount of cheer? And when does it turn from godly cheer to seeking achievements and possessions that are fleeting as vapor? And how do we balance being real and transparent in front of Christians and non-Christians alike? Those are some questions that this psalm, I think, brings us to wrestle with. And for us to think we could get to an answer and just, that's the answer, let me click through this and be on with it, would be a disservice to it. We've been doing some Spanish. Okay, I'm like way behind. I'm like weeks behind where the kids are. But here's the interesting thing about that Spanish program is Rosetta Stone, just like a free trial thing. If you get the wrong answer, it tells you what the right one is. So you might have to repeat the answer, but then they've already told you what the answer is. So you could theoretically just go through, click, and get all the wrong answers the first time, and then go back through and you would have it. Sometimes as Christians, whenever we come to Bible study, we want an easy lockstep answer without getting real, without being transparent, without wrestling with things. And this psalm is a reminder that sometimes we have to wrestle with it. Sometimes it's not easy and especially laid out. But at the end of the day, we know that God is on His throne. And we know that, as verse 7 said, our hope is in Him. And that's something that will never be shaken or lost. Our hope is always found in Him. As we go to... Sorry, I'm getting like text messages and stuff on my watch. Dismiss. As we go into our time of prayer tonight, I need to go get one of the prayer sheets. But Brother Tim, will you? There's plenty in the back. I'll go grab one. If you'll shut off our live feed. See you, Facebook. How many okras were there?